I used to think my husband was perfect because he was insanely disciplined about his physique and never touched a single carb. Then, at a business dinner, he took the half bowl of Korean ramen and my female assistant had left unfinished, bent his head down, and slurped it up from where she'd bitten into it. Not even leaving a drop of the broth, I didn't blow up on the spot. The next day, I had a full year's supply of Korean ramen flown in from overseas and piled up in his office. Since you love it so much, from today on, this is what you'll be having for all 3 meals. Cross the line again. And it won't be as simple as just making you eat noodles. A year of ramen should be enough for him to remember one thing. Anyone who won't play by the rules can be replaced at any time. 1 to land the new project. I waited around the client's chairman for a month just to get this chance at a business dinner. But just 5 minutes after taking my seat, Jo Han's newly hired assistant barged in. Anyeonjo, by she had her hair in a side ponytail and was wearing a fluffy fleece jacket with the strap of her backpack hanging loosely off her arm. As soon as she stepped through the door, she gave everyone at the table a deep 90 degrees bow. I'm by sure. Mr. Sho said there was good food here, so I hopped on a shared bike and came straight over. The faces of the older clients at the table immediately darkened. Such an excessive gesture is oppressive and bad luck. Besides, I couldn't help frowning. I turned to Zhao Hachuan beside me and lowered my voice. Get it sorted within a minute. Otherwise, don't blame me for embarrassing you in front of everyone. Zhao Chuan stood up and lightly tapped the tabletop with his slender fingers. Chairman Wang, don't mind her. The girl just graduated. She means well. Everyone at the table was an old hand, and the atmosphere eased up a little, but I knew it deep down. He hadn't actually driven her away. He just handled it tactfully and smoothed things over for her. That kind of quiet favoritism. It really disappointed me, but with the client still there, I don't want to make a scene and leave things too ugly. Bai Si, however, was completely oblivious to the undercurrent swirling around the table. She sat down right next to Zhao Hachuan and cut the client. Today, I'm here to show you all a thing or two. Uncle, let me treat you to the real stuff. Just as she finished speaking, the server pushed the door open and came in. Grilled beef intestines, Korean fried chicken, spicy stir-fried rice cakes, Korean instant noodles. They filled the whole table. All of it was heavy on oil, sugar, and carbs, and none of the light Cantonese dishes I had carefully prepared for the client were there. 2. I set my chopsticks down, cleared the table. The waiter froze for a second. I said, cancel it and replace it with the dishes I ordered. Upon hearing that, bye, she immediately snapped like a cat with its tail stepped on, stopping her in a shrill voice. Madam, what would you, a housewife, know the things you ordered are all old folks' dishes. They've been outdated for ages. These are the hottest dishes right now. Even idols eat them on live streams. She curled her lip. Well, yeah, you're kept by Mr. Joe at home every day. So you've completely lost touch with what's trending outside during the month. By she had been at the company. I happened to be stationed full-time at the client's office to push the project forward. So she had never seen me. In her eyes, I was just a housewife living off my husband. I couldn't be bothered to explain anything to this idiot and simply raised a hand to cut her off. Assisted by, my patience is limited. Say one more word, and you won't need to come to the company tomorrow. Now, either shut up or get out. Bai Zai's eyes immediately reened, and she looked toward Johan for help. Joe? Haichuan picked up his teacup and gently blew on the tea leaves floating on the surface. Xi was flat, and he didn't even look at her. Learn more from your wife. 3. The Cantonese dishes I ordered were brought out quickly. Mr. Wang, Mr. Lee, that was just a minor hiccup. I stood up and served the soup myself, speaking in a steady tone. Let's stick to the original plan and have something seasonal that's easy on the stomach. This soup has been simmering for 8 hours. Please give it a try. The mood at the table came back to life by she. She was left sitting off to the side, hardly touching her chopsticks. Zhao Chuan glanced at her, lifted his teacup with his long fingers, took a sip, and said nothing. But before long, a small bowl of Korean ramen was placed in front of Bai Shi. Bai Zai's eyes lit up. and she lowered her head to eat in small bites. After only a couple of bites, she turned sideways and leaned in close to Zhao Han, her voice soft and sticky sweet. Brother Haichuan, my tummy is so full. She nudged the bowl forward and traced little circles on the edge of the table with her fingertips. But my mommy says wasting food will get you struck by lightning. Help me finish it. Okay, Zhao. Chuan glanced at the bowl of noodles that had barely been touched. Then he turned and looked at me across the chatter of clinking glasses. His gaze settled on me. I was busy refilling Chairman Wang's teacup and didn't look up. He withdrew his gaze, took the chopsticks she handed him, lowered his head, and took a bite. His movements were very slow, as if he were savoring some rare delicacy. With the bowl nearly empty, he picked it up and drank the soup down to the last drop. Then he wiped the corner of his mouth, leaned back against the chair again, lifted his glass, and joined in the small talk with the client. He remained composed as if nothing had happened. I kept serving dishes to Chairman Wang as though the man and woman behind me were nothing more than thin air. After the banquet ended, I personally escorted Chairman Wang and his group downstairs. The car arrived and they left. I didn't go back to the private room on the way back. I called the butler first. Help me order a year's supply of Korean instant noodles. Have them delivered to my home and to Zhaoan's office starting tomorrow. That's all he gets for every meal. For the next morning, I was seated in the dining room when Zhao Han came downstairs. A servant brought out a steaming bowl of Korean ramen. He glanced at it, slowly unfastened his cufflinks, and sat down across from me. This for breakfast. I took a sip of coffee. Starting today, this is all you're having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He picked up his chopsticks, then put them back down. Mingwa. His voice was low. What happened yesterday was my fault. Sayosi is my high school teacher's daughter. I owe her father a favor, so I've just looked out for her a little more. But if it bothers you, I'll be more mindful of my boundaries from now on. I looked at him, but said nothing. He waited a few seconds. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, more like a resigned surrender. It was just a bowl of noodles. Was it really worth getting this angry with me? I sat down my coffee cup. Shohan, do you know why I agreed to marry you back then? He was silent for a moment. Yes, because my dad saved your dad. I nodded. That's one reason. And second, you used to be so obedient. 5. My thoughts were pulled back to many years ago. My dad and Joe, huge dad, were good friends back then during a fishing trip at sea. They ran into rough waves and both fell into the ocean at the same time. And in the end, it was his father who used the last bit of his strength to push my dad up onto the shore. Later, my dad made a success of his business and founded the Shin Group. But after the show, family lost their pillar of support. Life became tight and difficult. My dad never forgot that life-saving debt and sent money to his mother countless times only for her to firmly send it back. She said, "Your father saved someone out of righteousness. He never expected anything in return. I can't take this money and stain his good intentions." Everyone was deeply moved by this noble and generous gesture. But just as I was graduating from college, Joe Han's mother came to our door, carrying his father's ashes to propose the marriage. My dad hardly hesitated before nodding his agreement. I lost my mind over it then. My dad just looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, "Mingwa, without Uncle Zao, your dad wouldn't be where he is today, and neither would you. We owe him too much. Our family has to repay this debt." I relented, but I made one condition. I wanted to observe Zhaoan for 3 years. He was very obedient during those 3 years. He was good-looking and kept very clear boundaries with women, knowing I admired a self-disciplined, well-defined physique. He worked out like crazy and pushed himself to the extreme. He said he'd cut out carbs, and he really didn't touch a single grain of rice after we got married. Whenever I craved something tasty, I'd ask him to have a cheat meal with me, even if it was just a single bite of rice. He would flatly refuse, saying he wanted to keep looking the way I liked. I thought he'd always be this obedient until yesterday. I pulled my thoughts back. My gaze fell back on his face, and my tone grew colder. "Zhaoan, I hope you'll keep being obedient. What happened yesterday I didn't lose my temper on the spot because I was giving you enough face. Cross the line again. And next time it won't be as simple as just eating noodles. Over the past year at Lamian, I hope you remember one thing. Anyone who can't follow the rules can be replaced at any time. Zhao Huachuan gave me a long, deep look, said nothing more than lowered his eyes, and quietly finished his noodles. 6 the next day at noon, the company. I just had my assistant send the cooked ramen to Juan's office. Bai Shi then came rushing in, excitedly. Mister, let's go get Kim back together today. She pushed open the office door and immediately spotted a steaming bowl of instant noodles on the dining table. Mr. Zhao, why are you eating instant noodles? I was sitting on the sofa across from Zhaoan, slowly sipping my coffee. For the next year, all he'll be eating is ramen. When Bai Shi saw me, her face immediately twisted into contempt. Why? Now, what gives you the right to stop him from eating anything else? That's too much. I curled my lips into a slight smile. He enjoyed the ramen so much yesterday, so I let him have as much as he wanted. Her expression changed and her voice turned sharp. Now, isn't this a bit too much? Mr. Zhou is the company president. What kind of look does it give if he's eating instant ramen every day? You're just a housewife. Do you even know how to run a company? Do you know how hard Mr. Zhou works out there? What right do you have to control what he eats? Bai, she grew more and more agitated. I've never liked you from the start. Mr. Zhou is such a good man, and you keep bossing him around every day. So he can't even enjoy a decent meal other than spending Mr. Zhou's money. What else can you do? I stood up. Smack, a slap, crisp, and clean. She covered her face and looked at me in disbelief. First, this company belongs to my dad. Second, Zhou Han, CEO position was given by me. Third, you're fired. Get out now. Bai Shi was utterly stunned, like a drowning person clutching at a lifeline. She turned to Zhao Han, tears streaming down her face. President Zhao. President Zhao. Look at her. Zhao Han rested his long fingers on the edge of the table and tapped lightly once. Get out. Just 2 words, neither loud nor soft. But they froze Bai Shi in place. Zhouan didn't look at her again. He simply picked up a chopstick full of noodles and slowly put it into his mouth. She finally didn't dare make another sound and turned to run out. 7. Life for Zhao Chuan and me returned to its quiet, ordinary rhythm. Only now, he spent twice as much time at the gym. His lean muscles became even more defined, his air of self-restraint even stronger, and there was a new distance in the way he looked at me. I didn't mind. All I ever wanted was for him to do as he was told. It wasn't until half a month later that my best friend Suta Tang invited me to work out the moment I stepped into the equipment area. I froze. Xiao Hua Chuan was lying on a bench press bench working out, sweat sliding down along his jawline. By she wearing a form-fitting workout outfit was pressed right up against his side. Brother Juan, thank you for helping me get this private training job. Her voice was syrupy sweet and for booking a whole year of private sessions for me as she spoke, while Zhao Han was exerting himself with his eyes closed. But she quickly pulled out 2 matching couple tattoo stickers. She stuck one on her own chest and pressed the other directly over the left side of his heart. Zhou Han hesitated for a moment, saying nothing and not pushing her away. Suong sucked in a sharp breath beside me. I said nothing and walked over 8. Biishu was the first to spot me, a hint of smugness flashing in her eyes. Director Shin. Oh, wait. No, that's right. You're no longer my superior. I'm 20 this year, so I'll call you Aunt Shin. Aunt Shin comes here to out, too, but with a body as bulky as yours. Working out probably won't do much, will it? I gave her a quick once-over and smiled. 20. You're losing collagen pretty fast. I glanced down at my own taut waist and stomach, then back at her. I'm at 19% body fat. How many push-up inserts are you wearing just to squeeze out that much cleavage instead of worrying about my body? You should probably worry about your IQ first. At 20, pulling a stunt like sticking couple tattoos on. A married man is pretty impressive. Brain deficiency, evenly distributed. Bishy's face turned bright red. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say a word. I turned toward the front desk and lifted my chin. Manager Jean. I pointed at Bai Shi, my tone calm. Settle this private tutor's pay and let her go. Bishi went pale. Why? What right do you have to fire me again? I curved my lips into a smile. Forgot to mention this gym is also part of my dad's business. He just transferred it to me not long ago. So, do you understand now? The manager immediately said to Bai Shi, Miss Bai, please leave at once. Zhou Huaichuan sat up from the bench press. Bright moon. His voice wasn't loud, yet it brought the entire equipment area to a hush. I was the one who brought Shirin. Her family's going through hard times. I just helped her find a job. If it bothers you, I'll have her move somewhere else. But not here. Not like this. I stared at him. Zhaoan, I told you, don't cross the line again. If you won't listen, then let's get a divorce. I pulled my phone out of my jacket pocket and dialed a number. Dad, we're holding a shareholders meeting tomorrow. I want to fire Zhao Chuan. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Understood. I hung up the phone and walked away. 9. The next day, the shareholders meeting was held. By the time I arrived, the meeting room was already packed. Xia Huachuan sat in the CEO's chair, sharply dressed in a tailored suit with a cup of Americano in front of him, looking perfectly normal. My dad was seated at the head of the table, idly twirling a pen in his hand. I pushed the door open and sat down next to my dad. My dad glanced at me. There was something complicated in that look, even a hint of guilt. It left me with a faint sense of unease. But then I thought about it again. In this company, my dad holds 40% of the shares. I hold 35% and Zhou Han only has 10%. The rest is split among a few small shareholders with my dad and me joining forces. Removing Zhao Han would be a piece of cake. Besides, I'd already told my dad about the murky relationship between Zhaoan and Baishi. Even if my dad still felt obliged to repay the kindness from back then, he could never ignore the happiness of his only daughter. I stood up and swept my gaze across the shareholders present. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm moving to remove Zhao Han from his position as president. The conference room fell silent for a moment. Let's vote. My father said in the first round of voting. I voted in favor. The minority shareholders exchanged uneasy glances. Some voted in favor while others abstained. Finally, it was my dad's turn. He looked up and glanced at me. I vote against it. I froze. The atmosphere in the conference room suddenly shifted. Xiao Huai sat down his coffee cup and slowly spoke. Since Director Shin has proposed removing me, I have a proposal as well. Since Xin Minghua took over as sales director, she has been absent from her post for an extended period. Her professional competence is poor and her actual contribution to the company is questionable. I proposed that Xin Minggu would be dismissed. I gave a cold laugh. Let's vote. Shon cut me off. A few votes against, a few abstentions. In the end, all eyes turned to my dad. He raised his hand. I'm with you. In that instant, my blood ran cold. Right then, a message came through on my phone. Just a few short words. Yet, they made my eyes go wide with rage. I know why my dad's been acting like this now. 10. The conference room was eerily quiet. A few minor shareholders looked at one another in silence. Some lowered their heads to check their phones, while others pretended to study the grain on the table. No one dared to look at me. My dad didn't say a word to me, and with the secretary supporting him, left the conference room without a second glance. He didn't even look at me again. The moment the door closed, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding against my eardrums, beat after beat. Very well, since the decision has been made. Zhaoen's voice broke the silence. He glanced at his watch, calm and composed. Next, I'd like to announce a new personnel appointment. As soon as he finished speaking, the conference room door was pushed open by she walked in wearing an oversized Korean-style suit, her face perfectly made up, her chin lifted high. The moment she saw me, she smiled sweetly. Director Shin, why are you still here? She covered her mouth on purpose, her eyes curving into crescent moons. Oh no, actually, I should call you former director now. Shouldn't I? Zhaoan looked up. There was no great tenderness in his gaze, but there was a hint of indulgence. Then he looked at the shareholders present. his tone steady at carrying unquestionable authority. Everyone, after Shinmingwa's dismissal, the position of sales director is vacant. On my recommendation, Bai Shi is hereby appointed as the new sales director, effective immediately. Undichi, ah. This time, the hushed murmur could no longer be contained. No one could believe that a girl who had already been fired twice and didn't even know the basics of office etiquette could suddenly leap to become sales director. Everyone could see that Zhao Hua Chuan was telling everyone, even if Baishi was useless, as long as he wanted to, he could still lift her up. Bishi turned to look at me smugly, her chin tilted high. Oh, Aunt Shin, I'm so sorry. From now on, I'm the sales director. If you can't find a job, I can arrange a cleaning position for you. After all, a place like the company should really be left to us young people. I looked at her and suddenly laughed. Young people? You mean those young people who can't even write a proper market research report and only know how to fetch tea and pour water for the boss while acting all flirtatious? By Xshire's expression, changed by she. Do you even know what a sales director is supposed to do? It's about leading a team to close deals, not groveling like a pet for the boss. It's about carrying the numbers, not acting like the heroine of a drama all day, bowing and fawning over everyone you meet. You don't even have the most basic business skills, and you still dare to sit in that seat. She froze for a moment, then lifted her chin. Brother, Hu Chuang will teach me those. I laughed. The sales director is responsible for the full year performance target. If it's not met within a quarter, they're automatically dismissed. Last year, the target for this position was 300 million. Take it slow. I stood up, picked up the folder on the table, walked over to Zhaoan, and stopped in front of him. Zhao Han, you and I both know exactly what you did to win today, but it's still too soon to say who'll come out on top. We'll see about that. With that, I picked up my purse and turned to leave 12 when I got back to the villa. I immediately ordered the servants, pack up everything that belongs to Zahn and dump it all at the front door. The servant froze for a moment, then quickly replied, yes, miss. Then I called the lawyer. Lawyer Zhang, please bring the divorce agreement and the prenuptial agreement to my house. Half an hour later, Lawyer Zhang arrived. I turned to the last page of the divorce agreement, signed my name, and placed it on the coffee table. By the time Jean pushed open the door and came in, a row of suitcases was neatly lined up in the entryway. He glanced at them without saying a word, walked into the living room, and let his gaze settle on the divorce agreement on the coffee table. I sat on the sofa, picked up my teacup, and said, sign it. According to the prenuptial agreement, you'll walk away with nothing if we divorce. The 10% stake in the company is what you're entitled to, and I won't touch it. 13. Zhou Hua took off his suit jacket, tossed it onto the sofa, and sat down opposite me. Minhua, do I really have to spell it out so clearly for you? His gaze seemed calm, but there was a flicker of emotion hidden in his eyes about what happened this time. I only wanted to teach you a lesson. Mining, you're too proud. You made me eat ramen for a whole year in front of all those people at the company. Did you ever think about my pride? I said nothing. A cold, humorless curve touched the corner of his mouth, but his gaze was dark. I don't like Baishi, but if you're making me choose between you and her, I have no choice but to put you in your place first. As long as you lower your head now and soften your tone, I can pretend nothing happened and you can go back to the company tomorrow. He reached out, picked up the teacup I'd only half finished on the coffee table, lifted it and took a sip with his head slightly bowed. The gesture was perfectly natural. I met his gaze, slowly stood up and walked over to him. Smack! I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. 14. My slap sent Hua's face snapping to one side. He pressed his tongue against the inside of his cheek, then slowly turned back to look at me. I looked at him and said, word by word, you want me to bow my head, maybe in the next life. How can you have the nerve to stand there acting all superior in front of me when you only beat me by using tactics like that? Zhou Han raised a hand and brushed his thumb across the corner of his mouth, slipping back into that cold, polished elite facade. Shinmua, think it through carefully once you're no longer employed by the company. Under the Articles of Association, Chairman Shin and I have the right to forcibly buy back your shares. I looked at him and smiled. Then go ahead and try. I took a step back and pointed at the pile of luggage by the door. Now take your things and get out. Joe Han gave me a long, hard look, then stopped pushing the issue and turned to leave. 15. Just as Joe Han's car disappeared into the night, my phone rang. It was my dad. Mingwa, come to the old family house tomorrow. Your father has something to tell you. I held my phone and stared out the window, my heart feeling ice cold. Perfect. I wanted to make things clear with him. 2. The next day, at the Shin family's old residence. The courtyard was unusually quiet today. A servant led me in, and the tea in the living room was already brewed. My dad was sitting in the seat of honor with a purple clay teapot. In front of him, steaming hot, and beside him, there was another person sitting there as well, Zaoen's mother, Sushi. Sushi was wearing a white cashmere cardigan, her hair neatly pinned up, holding a teacup with elegant poise. When she saw me, she gave a slight curtsy and smiled. Mingu is here. Her voice was soft and gentle, like that of a kindly elder. My expression darkened. The text message was right. My dad and Su Shuin had already been together for a long time. I didn't even look at her. I went straight over and sat down across from my dad. Dad, go ahead and say it. My dad sat down his teacup and got straight to the point. You want to divorce Juan. I walked over and stood in front of him. I don't agree. He's exceptionally capable. Over the years, the company has been in his hands, and its performance has tripled. He's also been respectful to you. As for the rumors out there, I looked into them. There's nothing concrete, just because you suspect he's been getting close to some young girl. You want a divorce. I curled one corner of my mouth into a faint mocking smile. When I got married, I listened to you once. This time, I won't be listening again. My father's expression darkened instantly. He picked up a document from the coffee table and threw it in front of me. If you're determined to get a divorce, then transfer all the Shin Group shares under your name to Aunt Shulen at market price. 16. I clutched those few sheets of paper, my fingertips icy cold, and looked up at my dad. Dad, what do you mean by that? My dad picked up the tea Sushi had just poured, took a sip, and didn't look at me. Mingwa, ever since your mom passed away, your dad has been on his own all these years. His voice was a little hoarse. It wasn't until I met your Aunt Sue that I finally had someone by my side who truly cared for me. She stayed with me for so many years without any title or claim because of your relationship with Juan. I will never be able to give her a proper, legitimate status in this lifetime. He paused. This is my way of making it up to her. I was so angry I could only laugh bitterly. If you two were already together, why did you force me to marry Zhaoan? You wronged her, so you're using my things to make it up to her. Chairman Shin, you really know how to play your cards. My dad flushed red, hit where it hurt by my words. As long as you don't get a divorce, Dad won't force you to give up your shares. Your Aunt Sue and I both just want you and John to be happy together. Sushi stood off to the side, fake tears in her eyes, her voice soft and pitiful. Mingwa, don't blame your dad. It's all Auntie's fault. Auntie just hopes the two of you can stay happy together and not let what happened with me affect your relationship. Watching them play off each other like that, I only felt disgusted. Of course, Sushi Ayan and Zhao Huan want me not to get divorced. So, all you want is to kick me out and steal everything I have. Let me tell you, they can't get their hands on what belongs to me. Shin Mingwa. My dad sprang to his feet, his finger trembling as he pointed at me. Why, you ungrateful wretch. If you don't sign today and agree to stay with Juan properly, then don't ever call me dad again. The Shin family won't have anything to do with you. Okay, I nodded, unnervingly calm. I picked up the pen, turned to the last page of the agreement, and signed my name neatly in the transfer's signature spot. Then I slid the agreement back toward them. It's signed. Now have finance transferred the money to my account immediately at the agreed price. 17. My dad clearly hadn't expected me to sign so readily. He froze for a moment. A flash of wild delight crossed Sashwilian's eyes, but it was quickly swallowed up by concern. Old Chin, This is Minua just saying that out of anger, she said, pretending to try to stop him. Transfer the money. I looked at my dad and repeated it. My father stared at me for a few seconds, then finally waved at the CFO waiting beside him. Transfer it to her. A few minutes later, my phone pinged. A huge sum of money landed in my account. I picked up my phone and checked it, confirming the payment had come through. Then I stood up, took the signed copy of the agreement, and looked over at my dad. Cash for goods, and we're even. From today on, the Shin family is the Shin family, and I am me. Dad, if we meet again in business, I won't hold back. You'd better watch yourself. After saying that, I strayed out of the home where I'd grown up, a place that now felt cold and utterly unfamiliar outside. The sunlight was blinding. I got into the car and closed the door, cutting myself off from everything in the old house outside. Then I took out my phone and dialed an unsaved number. The call was answered after just one ring. Hello, it's me, I said flatly, my voice calm and unreadable. The shares have already been sold at the peak, and the funds are all in place. Go ahead. A concise reply came from the other end of the line. Understood. After hanging up, I started the car and drove away from the Shin family's old estate. 18, that month of the divorce, cooling off period. I didn't give myself a moment to breathe. I threw myself head first into my new job and quietly started untangling all the threads that had been laid over the years. 1 month later, I met Joe Juan right away at the entrance to the Civil Affairs Bureau. It was over in no time. The seal was stamped and 2 dark red divorce certificates were issued. As we stepped out of the building, he called out to me, Mingwa. I stopped in my tracks and didn't look back. Tomorrow night, the Shin Group is hosting an investment gala. It'll be attended by some of the biggest domestic players in capital, Sequoia, Hill House, IDG, and a few sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East. The gala was planned by she. She handled everything herself from the venue to the program. He paused, then tossed it out casually. If you're interested, you can come take a look. After all, you were once part of the Shin family, too. I turned around and looked at him. There was no expression on his face, but deep in his eyes was a faint, almost imperceptible calm, the composure of a winner. He was inviting me to watch him, to see Baishi, to see how glorious they were going to be. Okay, I nodded. I'll go. After all, we'd been laying the groundwork for so long. It was time to close the net. 19, the next evening, the Peninsula Hotel, a huge LED screen, stood at the entrance to the banquet hall, looping a promotional video for the Shin Group. The visuals were exquisite, and the score was grand and sweeping, but the text was in Korean. I stood at the door for a few seconds and couldn't help but chuckle when I walked in. She was standing behind the check-in desk. She was wearing a neon pink Korean-style gown with a skirt so puffy it could have doubled as an umbrella. Oh my, Aunt Shin, you really came. I thought Brother Chuan was joking, but I didn't expect you to actually be this brave, coming to a place like this. She sized me up from head to toe, then covered her mouth and laughed. But Aunt Shin, you're dressed way too plainly. Everyone here today is a big shot. At least wear a proper gown. I was wearing a black tailored suit, perfectly fitted, made from Lorikina fabric. It was 100 times more expensive than that Tab-on knockoff she was wearing. But I wasn't planning to tell her director, you look beautiful today. Shay froze for a moment, clearly not expecting me to compliment her like a walking fluorescent jellyfish. I said it with a smile and stepped into the banquet hall behind me. Her startled scream rang out, but it was drowned out by the welcoming music. 20. The banquet hall was a flurry of clinking glasses and lively toasts, crystal chandeliers, a champagne tower, and an orchestra. It was all done up to the nines. But one quick glance, and I spotted the problem. The buffet table was laid out with Korean fried chicken and tagbeki. The drinks were all green bubble. A partner let out a low snort of laughter. Has the Shin family's taste really gotten this bizarre now? Zoin pressed his fingertips to his brow, a rare trace of embarrassment showing on his face. Seeing this, Sushi quickly stood up to smooth things over, holding her wine glass and putting on an air of elegance. Please forgive them, everyone. The child is just being immature, but they mean well. Before she could finish, She was cut off by a female CEO. Mrs. Joe. No, I should call you a miss. Sue. Everyone in the circle knows a thing or two about Chairman's family matters. You'd better mind your manners. Those words left Sushi in pale as a sheet at a loss for whether to stand or sit. My dad's face turned ashen, but he couldn't even say a word to defend me. 21. I ignored the farce over there and locked my gaze directly onto the most central spot in the room. A man past 50, composed and unflappable, Mr. Chin, the founder of Chiming Capital, one of the top venture capital firms in the country. He was the big fish my dad and Joe Chu were trying to land tonight. I picked up a glass of champagne and walked straight over to him, Mr. Chin and Mua. I handed over a well-prepared proposal. Chairman Chin looked a little surprised, but still took it. He had only flipped through 2 pages when his expression changed just then. Zhao Han came over with my dad and the others looking grim. Mingwa, knock it off. Your little startup was only just registered. What makes you think you're in any position to talk partnership with Chairman Chin? My dad's face darkened too as he snapped. Mingwa apologized to Chairman Chin right now. Don't make a fool of yourself here. Who exactly is making a fool of themselves here? Chairman Chin sat down his wine glass and turned to my dad. I went over Shin Grip's annual report for last year very carefully. Revenue growth has slowed. Profit margins have slipped and cash flow is tight. At first, I thought it was just the market environment. He glanced at the Korean fried chicken stall that still hadn't been taken down from the stage and shook his head. Now, it looks like it's a management problem. I don't believe a company that can't even pull off a proper dinner gala can manage our money well. Chairman Chin paused. Also, you just said that your daughter's Mingguan capital is very small. My father froze for a moment. Yes. Chairman Chin first looked at me, then at my dad, whose face was full of shock, and suddenly smiled. President Shin, you may not know this yet. Ms. Shin's Mingguan capital has over the past 3 years successfully taken controlling stakes in your Shining Group's largest raw material supplier, Hua Wuong, and its largest logistics partner, Sihai. Zhao Hua's expression froze. I stepped forward and took over the conversation. In other words, the lifeline of the Shin family from procurement to sales has long been in my hands. I looked at Zhaoan, a cold smile on my face. You think that little profit growth you had last year was because you're exceptionally capable. No, it's that I'm willing to give you a cut so you can drive up the stock price, letting me cash out at the top. As for the funds I have on hand now, they're more than enough to build an entirely new business empire from the ground up. And the Shin Group, the moment I cut off its supply chain, within 3 months, it'll turn into an empty shell that can't even put out an annual report. Chairman Chin, I turned to him. Right now, do you think it's wiser to invest in an empty shell or in a new king who controls the entire industrial chain? The entire banquet hall fell silent. 22. Zhao Chuan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, only a cold scarlet, he remained. He stepped forward and grabbed my wrist, his voice tight. When did you start planning all this? I shook off his hand and swept a cold, piercing look over my dad and Sushi. Ever since my mom was still lying in a hospital bed, I realized my dad and Sushi had been involved with each other for a long time. My dad shuddered all over, his face going deathly pale. Back when my mom was gravely ill, they were already having an affair in secret. Sushi egged my dad on to marry me off to you all so I could gradually take over the Shin Group. I agreed to get married and said I wanted to observe things for 3 years, not because I fell for you, but because I didn't have the strength to confront you head on at the time. Giving you the CEO position wasn't an acknowledgement of you either. Having me as sales director made it easier to secretly gather upstream and downstream resources and gradually hollow out the Shin Group. Sushi staggered backward and screamed. I never did anything with your dad. You're slandering me. Slandering you. I smirked and motioned to my assistant. On the big screen, photos instantly appeared of my dad and Sushi going in and out of hotel years ago. The timeline right before my mom passed away. Back then, you showed up to propose marriage carrying an urn, acting all high and mighty while secretly already figuring out how to swindle the family out of everything. Too bad your plans fell flat. 24 Hoan looked at me, his eyes filled with shock, unwillingness, and a hint of panic. He himself hadn't even noticed. So you never liked me from the very beginning. I was just your pawn. I looked into his eyes. Those eyes had once put on 3 years of tender affection before me. And what else? I lifted an eyebrow, my tone cool and indifferent. You think you hid it well, but you have 2 flaws. First, you're way too obedient. A normal man wouldn't give up carbs for 3 years just to please a woman unless he's acting. Second, the way you eat that bowl of ramen was way too deliberate. You wanted to make me angry, to make me lose control, to get me to make a scene in public. Then you'd have a reason to get my dad to kick me out of the company. But you're underestimating me. I'm not going to lose my dignity over a bowl of noodles. Johan gave a bitter smile. What about the divorce? Was the divorce part of your plan from the very beginning? 2. Yes, the man who was so disciplined it bordered on harshness. The seemingly perfect man finally fell apart completely at that moment. You told me to leave with nothing, and I did. You told me to eat ramen for a whole year, and I did that too. Honestly, I figured you might take revenge on me. He paused. I just thought that if you really had even a little bit of feeling for me, you'd soften up. I didn't say anything, but you didn't. He gave a faint smile, but the curve of his mouth looked worse than tears. Not once, from beginning to end. 25, the banquet hall was dead quiet. Every investor was watching the show unfold. She stood at the edge of the stage, her makeup smudged, the fluorescent pink dress glaring under the lights. She finally understood from start to finish. She had only ever been a pawn used to provoke me and push me out of the game. Zhaoan had never liked her. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Sushi stood beside my dad, and the gentleness on her face shattered completely. The way she looked at me was filled with hatred, resentment, and fear because she knew it was all over. My father sat on the floor, tears streaming down his face. He watched my retreating back, his lips trembling as he tried to call out my name, but no words would come. I stood in the center of the banquet hall, facing all the investors below, ladies and gentlemen. My voice was steady and clear. Minuan Capital officially launched its series of funding round today. Our supply chain network covers 100% of the upstream and downstream operations of the Shining Group. We have steady cash flow, a mature distribution network, and a fully integrated industrial chain spanning 7 subsidiaries. What the Shining Group can do, Minuan can do too. What the Shining Group can't do, Minuan can do as well. Because the Shining Group is nothing but an empty shell. The real work is being done here under me. The Xing Group's days were numbered long ago. 26, one evening, 3 months later. I was organizing documents in my new office when my assistant pushed the door open and came in. I just got the news. The Shin family has entered bankruptcy liquidation proceedings that happened half a month earlier than I expected. Your dad was discharged from the hospital last week, and he's now living alone in a rented place. Before she left, Sushi stole a lot of calligraphy, paintings, and antiques from the old house. Your dad's already looking for a lawyer to sue her. I put down my phone and said nothing. Outside the window, the city skyline stretched out before me with the setting sun tinting the glass curtain walls a deep golden hue. 3 months ago, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the Peninsula Hotel, taking in the night view. 3 months later, I was in a different place, and my state of mind was completely different. What about Johan? I asked. He went overseas. The assistant said with a slightly odd tone. He's washing dishes in the kitchen of a Chinese restaurant, saying he wants to build up capital and start over abroad. I said nothing and turned a page in the file, and by issue 2, the assistant leaned against the desk. She's the truly interesting one. I looked up at her after you left. She kept borrowing money on all kinds of platforms to maintain her socialite image, renting luxury apartments, buying designer bags, throwing parties. Just the Korean-style cosmetic treatments alone left her with over 600,000 yuan in debt. She couldn't pay it back, so she kept robbing Peter to pay Paul and eventually ended up taking out payday loans. Last month, someone reported her, and the police found out she was involved in an illegal loan brokerage ring, helping launder over 3 million yuan. She's now in detention, waiting for her trial. After saying that, the assistant looked at me as if waiting for my reaction. I closed the file and got up to walk over to the window outside. Dusk was settling in, and the city lights were coming on one by one. The emotional blackmail, the betrayal, the schemes, all of it faded into nothing more than a passing cloud. From here on out, no more toxic people entangling me, no more ties to the past. I hold the power now, and I'm moving toward the light. I won this game, and my life has only just begun the end.